This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good morning, this is Frida Liu. You're listening to Raise Your Game. We have Hetal Doshi from OPsych with us again, and this is our series of the butterfly effect. And we're talking about, of course, around this topic is transforming the way we transform organizations. We're talking about empathy today, and I guess a lot of companies now are taking it a little bit more seriously. But why are organizations choosing to run empathy programs these days?
Yeah, so Frida, thanks for having me back again. We are, one of the things that we did within the first week of the MCO was to do a bit of research with 20 organizations in Malaysia. And I was really pleasantly surprised that their number one priority was after the safety of their employees was also their well-being. I was really shocked.
Pleasantly shocked.
Pleasantly shocked, absolutely pleasantly shocked. Maybe about five companies were really, really having a tough time to see whether they would put business over employee well-being. And they decided to use their company values as a point of contention with regards to decision-making. And even the five that were in a huge dilemma decided that well-being was more important than business at that period of time. And in fact, since MCO till today, we've continued our research. Very interestingly, employee well-being is still right at the top of their list. That's amazing, isn't it?
Right. I mean, but these are largely larger organizations, which is good because they employ a lot of people.
These are the top 20 organizations with regards to well-being MNCs in Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're anywhere between 1,000 to about 45,000 employees.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Right. So, and the reason why you did that survey anyway?
We needed to know what the sentiment was on the ground before we started supporting all of these clients that we have. So we just wanted to know what was going on. And this was really sense-making for us, seeing how people were making decisions. That was the most important thing that we were trying to do over here. With regards to the pandemic, how were people making decisions? And that actually, one of the most interesting things, why did they decide that well-being was number one, was, interestingly, they're fearful about the reputation of the company.
Okay.
So on one hand, yes, they should care. But on the other hand, a major reason why companies are really caring about mental health related issues because of the fear of the reputation of the company. So I'm not sure whether it is, a superficial plight,
right,
or whether it is, a plight with a truthful agenda. But regardless, the agenda is right at the top of everyone's priority.
Right. Ideally, it shouldn't be about fear the reputation or to enhance the reputation, but it should really just come from the point of empathy on their end.
Well, whatever works. In our industry, we're just happy that people, organizations and employees are beginning to care about it. So whether it comes from a space of fear, whether it comes from a space of opportunity, at least it's showing up.
And most of them, are they aware of what to do?
No clue what to do. And that's why with regards to the increase in suicide rates, with regards to increase in domestic violence-related issues, with regards to employees becoming more fearful, anxious, and aggressive. And this is purely based on what they're experiencing from media, as well as their normal conversations with people, without even doing any assessments of any sort, without having real concrete understanding of research. There is that sense that they have no idea what exactly to do with regards to supporting the well-being of employees right now. And so the way to go for them, in one way, it is to defend themselves in case anything goes wrong. Right. And the other part of it is obviously to support the growth of the company. So then, therefore, professionals like myself become partners in that process.
Right.
So that's a good thing, I guess.
Okay, and they do trust professionals to help them on this journey.
Absolutely. They do, because number one, at least if anything goes wrong, they can always say that they partnered with a professional. That's number one. And then any form of liability obviously goes to the professional or the professionals, which shouldn't necessarily be the case, but at least they called in a professional to support. So that's where the trust comes in, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. And also that safety, like I can sleep at night knowing that this is something that is at the top of our minds, is something that could create another crisis, and we're looking after it proactively.
Right. And I think it's taking action, right? Rather than, not understanding what to do is okay, but at least I'm getting help, to help the team.
Absolutely.
Right. What's the ultimate goal of building empathy during these times or at any time at all?
Yeah. So, I'd just like to maybe talk about three things here. So with regards to empathy is something that we experience. So it's something where I think a lot of us are quite used to this term called I put myself in somebody else's shoes. So it is a cognitive ability, a mental ability, and an emotional ability to imagine what somebody is going through. So it is experiencing somebody. And in the sciences, especially neurosciences, they've identified that we have something called a mirror neuron. So everyone's able to do this, unless, of course, you have any kind of deficits with regards to some of these neurons. We're always able to, if we want to, put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And you think about it, like if, somebody had their hands caught on their door and, had the door shut on their fingers, you would flinch immediately. So most of us have that ability to experience empathy. Most of us, and I say most of us because some of us have depletions or deficiencies. Experiencing empathy is something that organizations naturally have. The thing which is not necessarily there is the ability to demonstrate compassion for it. Right. And I think that's where a lot of organizations and leaders struggle, because with regards to demonstrating how they actually feel about it and that they're going to take action about it is something that they're uncertain about. They're like, what is the impression and impact that I will create if I become a little soft, if I become a little nice, if I promote a little bit flexibility? What is going to be the impact of that? The ultimate aim of empathy is to demonstrate compassion, which is an action. And sometimes compassion doesn't mean always being the nice person or doing the nice thing. Compassion sometimes means telling somebody off because you care about them as well. The ultimate goal of empathy with regards to acting, demonstrating compassion is ultimately to be able to create connectedness. So I think this is a huge issue with organizations right now. A majority of my clients, when I speak to them, they are absolutely clueless with regards to how people are actually coping and how people are actually performing. A lot of the leaders say, I talk to them and ask them how they are, but I never hear anything that helps me to be able to help them. I always hear things like, I'm okay, I'm fine. It's very superficial kind of language. So this prevents connectedness when two people aren't able to open up. Connectedness is not just for two people to open up and connect to each other, but it's supposed to use that then to progress a movement going forward. And that's not happening right now. It is really, really difficult for organizations really struggling with regards to connectedness right now, even though they have this plight of empathy and they want to be compassionate, but they can't actually create connectedness. One of the most horrifying things that I have personally been experiencing when supporting clients is that in remote working conditions, employees aren't even doing video calls.
Oh, okay.
So employees are not inclined to showing their faces.
Right.
And, there is so much of research that talks about the importance of eye contact as a huge, easy way in with regards to connectedness. And so, the outcome of empathy is obviously connectedness for the purpose of progression, ultimately.
I was just going to ask you, how do you show connectedness during these times? So a simple thing like doing these calls that I'm able to see your face and all that. When someone feels like at least they're heard to or listened to or seen to, that has a direct correlation with your productivity levels.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. When I am heard and when I'm seen. And I think it's the Zulu tribe that, when they say hello, in the Zulu tribe, I think it's called Sawubona or Sawubona, which means I see you. And we don't have that, right? We don't have that. We're not enlightened beings where we can energetically immediately perceive how somebody's feeling. We need to still use our senses to be able to understand what is going on with somebody else, and that is not happening at all. Or it is happening at a much, much lesser level. So we're using a lot of diminished substitutes like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or phones, but without video.
Right.
And even with video, we're not having deeper conversations. You need much deeper conversations. When we accept diminished substitutes like emails or, normal calls, then we become diminished substitutes as well, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, no, it does. It does come diminished substitutes. What are the common misconceptions people have with regards to empathy?
Yeah, so empathy is a two-way process. It has to work two ways in organizations. One of the most shocking things that, we've been asked is how do leaders motivate their employees? And it's the same thing with regards to empathy. It's not just about leaders motivating or demonstrating empathy to employees. It has to be both. It has to be dual. It has to be two ways. It is a source of energy and it needs to flow. So it needs to go both ways. And that's one of the most shocking things that I have been experiencing. When we run polls, so we're doing a lot of online short sprints of empathy circles in organizations. And we ask employees this question: do your leaders have empathetic conversations with you? Majority of them say no. And then when we ask them, do you have empathetic conversations with your teams? And they say yes. So there is this notion of a superiority complex that we are demonstrating empathy, but others aren't. So if you are someone who's demonstrating empathy, then obviously your leader would somehow or the other also demonstrate it back to you. But why did you then, make a judgment or have this impression or conception that they are not demonstrating empathy, but you are? How can that be? Energy flows.
Right.
Energy absolutely flows.
You got an answer for that? Why?
That is, there is a psychological effect called superiority complex.
Right.
So majority of us think we do a better job than other people.
Right. We're talking about empathy and what this can do for organizations with Hetal Doshi from OPsych. This is, of course, Race Game. Stay tuned. BFM 89.9.
Backing feminist movements. BFM 89.9. The business station.
You're listening to Race a Game. Good morning, Frida Liu here. Hetal Doshi from OPsych, back for our series on the butterfly effect, talking about how we can transform the way we transform organizations. We're talking about empathy, especially during this period, and what empathy is or isn't. And, this empathy is not just about being nice.
No, absolutely not. It's not about being nice. I've had a couple of instances where leaders ask me what to do with employees who are not responding. And empathy is just about understanding. It is just about understanding what is going on. So definitely suspending your judgment to understand why a person is behaving the way that they are. But compassion means being able to do the right thing for the right intention as well. And sometimes you need to push the person incredibly. And that is a demonstration of compassion for the betterment of themselves as well. So it is absolutely not about being nice. Empathy, emotional intelligence is not about being nice. And I think that's the reason why people shun away from it, because it doesn't make any practical sense. Empathy is not the only strategy during these times. Empathy is a middle ground, a middle path. You need to take other forms of action to be able to make sure that the ultimate goal of an organization is reached, which is partnering with your people, but also progressing as an organization. And if somebody refuses to progress, there needs to be personal responsibility and accountability for that as well. Right. So with one of the organizations, we had a couple of employees who refused to come back to work. And, empathy was understanding that they were scared. Compassion was then having to say that, hey, we need to take the right action for the organization. Organization needs everybody to be here. And so what are we going to do? The connectedness was, what are you going to do? What are we going to do now?
Right.
And the employees actually, because of the tonality of that conversation, they said, you know what, we're willing to take a bit of a pay cut until we feel better, but we don't want to do this to you. So the connectedness then came into the fact that, okay, I understand that you are going through this, I'm going through this. What is the middle path now?
Right.
So it's not about being nice and just letting a person get away with feelings which are extremely fleeting.
Right. Okay, so I was going to ask, so it's not just about feeling empathetic, right? It's not the only strategy during these times. These are things like, when you have that conversation, the person said, I'll take a pay cut just so long that I'm able to work from home. There is, that's just one of the strategies where you can improve connectedness?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
It basically comes back down to what is the bigger agenda that fits both of us, and how do we empathetically understand the plight of each other? Because a lot of conversations that were going on were with regards during the MCO, and I was horrified that leaders must, employers must, leaders must. Can't be. It cannot be. It just cannot be one person's job or a top 15 people's job. It has to be a two-way thing.
Okay. Are there limits to empathy?
Absolutely, 100%. There are many situations where I have experienced people, especially now, having compassion fatigue. Like, I cannot listen to another sob story.
Okay.
Like, I cannot listen to any more drama from anybody at all.
Right.
So there is that notion that some of us are getting fatigued by other people's fatigue.
Right. Especially
and having to be compassionate about other people's fatigue.
Especially if we're not trained psychiatrists or psychologists.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I mean, majority of the psychs that I've been speaking to are also going through compassion fatigue. Absolutely. The nurses, the frontliners.
Right.
Whenever it comes to crisis, the amount of adrenaline that gets released in the atmosphere, right, is incredible. And the amount of oxytocin, the amount of love that is required in order to be able to neutralize that is incredible. Okay. Incredible. So therefore, being able to release that much of love and compassion at this point in time is very difficult.
Right. It's depleted. It's depleted already.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're absolutely correct. It depletes itself. So emotions are also what we call a zero-sum game. There has to be a budget for this.
Okay.
Because if I give you my energy of compassion, literally I have no energy left for somebody else. So I need to be able to have a budget with regards to how much of empathy and how much of compassion I can have in certain situations. And so quite a fair few of people actually are feeling quite grateful that they are at home now because they have a little bit more energy that is saved up from having to travel that they can kind of invest at home. But of course, it depends on what is going on at home as well.
Right.
Okay, so number one, compassion fatigue. Number two, emotions are a zero-sum game. If I give it to X, I will not have enough for Y. And so I need to really budget it properly. And also, the rate of lashing on social media is definitely increasing. And so when empathy reduces, aggression towards others increases.
Right.
So that's an automatic response. When I'm fatigued, empathetically, emotionally, I'm just going to become more aggressive. Anger is just basically, if you can understand anger deeply, it's just somebody who is hurt from not having the empathy given to them. And lastly, empathy can also erode ethics, right? So say, for example, in situations like this, I'm not sure whether you heard about a family that was going through something and they decided to have a family pact suicide.
Oh dear, no. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was, the family decided to commit suicide together because they had gotten themselves involved in something quite unethical.
Right.
That created larger debts than they could imagine. So when you have too much of empathy for your own inner circle, you actually would find that you now end up doing things that you have never done to protect them. And then you justify it because of that love. And that actually erodes the ethics. Right. And this also happens obviously in companies like Enron and stuff like that, right? So you become closer to your inner circle. You empathize more with them. It removes all kinds of logic and rationale, and you begin to indulge in things that are not so ethical. Okay. And this is where thieving, robberies, so on and so forth come in. Empathy, I think right now is being pushed to the brink and to an edge. And it is very scary. It is very, very scary because every other person that I speak to is tired.
Right. Oh, yes.
It's very tired.
Oh, yes.
And empathy or emotions is something that you don't even need to, it's like the cold or the flu. You don't even need to listen to somebody else to be able to feel tired. Just being around them can make you feel tired. You know what I mean?
You're sapping the energy out of me, really, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, for organizations, right? What can you do? Some steps to build connectedness. For those even remote work situations.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are doing is creating a point of relief. It's like a pressure cooker. So what we do in our bite-sized module. So previously we used to do like 2-day workshops or 1-day workshops. What we're doing now with organizations is basically an hour and a half per week, where we get people together and we use different techniques to create some kind of relief. And that's the most important thing. There is nothing more that you need to be doing now than creating some sort of relief, and also in that relief, being able to increase oxytocin levels, meaning bring the love back in.
Okay.
So that's one of the major things that we're doing. And the next thing is going back to old school. So going back to old school basically means that we pick up the phone as much as possible, go on video if possible.
Right.
And you look at the person and say, how are you really?
Okay.
How are you really? And one of the things that have happened over here in one of our sessions was we just got people to like close their eyes and imagine their teams breathing and being, enjoying the re-energizing effects of breathing, but also looking at your teams while being re-energized through your breathing. And one of the top leaders actually said, you know what? When I imagine this person, I imagine that I need to apologize to this person. I just need to apologize to this person. And so after the session, the leader just went and apologized to the subordinate. And the relief that created for the two of them was unimaginable. It just helped to clean up this connection that we have with people and then just move forward with that. So that's one of the couple of things that we need to do. Just going back to very simple, please, I'm sorry, thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah, and there are 4 agreements that I think that is worthwhile talking about now. I think with regards to a new era, we need to have new agreements. And there's a beautiful book called The 4 Agreements. In that, it talks about 4 very basic things. Number 1, I promise to speak the truth to you, nothing but the truth. Between bosses and subordinates or team members, I will tell you the truth in the most respectful manner. Do you give me the permission to? Because it's very tiring for a lot of leaders trying to get information out of the employees, but they don't. And it is very difficult for employees to tell their leaders to just calm down. So the ability or inability to speak the truth to each other has become very difficult because of fear of consequences. The second thing is personal responsibility or personal accountability, meaning I take full responsibility for myself. So I think at this stage, taking care of everybody has become so tiring that if you just take care of yourself, maybe we won't be so tired having to look after each other.
Right.
So for that, the statement is, I promise that I will not take any kind of, I will not take anything personally during MCO. Whatever you say during MCO or during this period of time is okay. I will not take anything personally because you're probably going through something as well. The third thing is I will not make any assumptions. And the fourth thing is we will continue to do our best. So this constant agreement can be something that I think organizations or leaders or teams or partners or friends or whatever, we just spit and shake hands in an old school manner to just say that, you know what, we don't need to sign any contracts. Let's continue to speak the truth. I promise I will not take anything personally. Please, let's not make any assumptions here, and let's always do our best for each other. So creating that safety back again can be quite valuable. And I just wanted to re-emphasize again, empathy is not about being nice. Empathy is about deep understanding and then making sure that we take the right action, which is ultimately to keep us more connected than before and for the progression for both of us.
Right. Something that's so needed right now, right? That the deeper
Isn't
connection.
it?
Yeah, thanks for sharing with us as usual, and also some simple things that we can do. Simple, but very effective. I've been speaking to Hetal Doshi from OPsych with our series, The Butterfly Effect. You've been listening to Racy Game, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.